that violence internally. And that is an important element that we have to take a look at, because it is born out of what I really believe is that cumulative frustration and anger that implodes, as I've said before, or explodes. And I think we're seeing both of those things. But more to the point is that we do understand what leads to resiliency. We do understand what leads to health and strength and healing and endurance and coping, all of which we're going to need a whole lot of. And not just us, but we're going to need a whole lot of that moving forward.
There's a lot of division in black households, broken relationships, the children and whatnot. What do you have to say about that, in view of what you just said?
I think we are looking at a changing landscape in terms of what's existing right now. Randall Robinson, in his book Quitting America, he talks about an experience he has having come across a group of young black males, and he phrases it around the notion of slavery's children, and he talked about the gap, the emotional, cultural, spiritual gap between himself, this older black man, and these young men who looked on curiously, that were moving together, but the separation was so great. And I think what I have to say about that is this separation. Part of rites of passage in African culture has to do with a sense of coming together, a sense of everyone being engaged in the life of a child. Now, we understand that we have teen parents, we have multiple generations of teen parents, absence of fathers, all of that. However, even with that, I mean, we've always had teen parents, I mean, everybody, you know. The difference was you had a whole crew of people raising them. It wasn't just that child who was...
Extended family. It
was not only an extended family, extended community.
Right.
You see,
Sure.
So we had a sense of connectedness. So despite, I believe we have the tools available to us, but we've got to reach back. We have to re-engage ourselves. Our children we've become alienated from each other to such a degree we're almost afraid of them ourselves. And so I think there has to be this sense of connection. We weren't worried about the 16-year-old that got pregnant, because she wasn't going to have to raise that child by herself. Not a chance. There's so many people around helping to support that. So on the one hand, yeah, we do have this fractured family, and we haven't, again, I haven't introduced crack or any of the other elements that are exacerbating that relationship. But we need to recreate community, and I'll say it over and over again. I call it village in my study guide, but it is that sense of collective responsibility. It is that sense of, you know what, if I'm not here, I know I can send you to Gill, and you're going to get what you need.
Should black history be an integral part of the curriculum that white kids take in the school?
It's American history, of course.
It's not happening?
Of course it's not. It's not happening. You're not going to, there is a disincentive, like I said, on the part of American educational institutions to talk about those realities. They're always ancillary. They're always, oh yeah, you can go and have a black history class, or you can study Native American culture, but it's not integral, as though there was the only culture in America is European. That's dominant. And that is, and consistently, we're trying to trivialize the contributions of all these other, quote, groups, making it, you know, again, it's trivial, it's not necessary. But in terms of identity development, in terms of a person being whole, it is crucial that I somehow see evidence of myself. Not in terms of, again, what I call the fruit and festival. Let's have, you know, oh yeah, let's recognition, you know, be nice to the Negro Day, you know. This is not recognizing the contributions of Africans to this country. It's not showing you know, the only way you get this information, it should be integral. When you start looking at, for example, the inventions, there's the American inventions, and then there's African American inventors. Why aren't they combined? Why aren't they in there? They're not given the relevance and the due respect as other folks who have contributed, and that's deliberate. And when you do that, I don't know who I am.
Okay. We got to take a break. Another one. There's that word that I bring up frequently increasingly frequently, and that is greed. Now, racism has its place, and it's old, and it's virulent, and needs to be addressed. But is it not an ingredient of racism, greed?
Absolutely.
And is it being dealt with?
Greed?
We're looking at all these things that are happening now, Wall Street here and corporations and ripping off and whatnot. So what do you think?
Oil spills, all of that's greed.
Ah.
It's all greed.
So what impact is that having on Mr. and Mrs. America and their children?
I think that a large impact is I'm going to get mine. If you really want to know, I'm going to get mine. It's breeding a level of selfishness, of fear, materialism, that is kind of a growing issue. You mentioned earlier, and I think this kind of fits very well, Nell Painter's book, The History of White People, which I think ought to be mandatory reading. Based on her book, history books will change. Mm-hmm. And what essentially we're talking about, for example, we're looking at sugar. Let's look at something like sugar diabetes, or you look at the problem with sugar, which was part of the greed and obsession that produced the sugarcane plantations, and the slavery that ensued was the obsession with sugar, just that. And the fact that folks had to have it, and they wanted it in mass because of its potential, everything from rum, all of the things that it produced. So greed is the etiology of all of this stuff. Being stolen, the whole idea of the trade itself and the billions it produced, which are continually being produced as a result of that unpaid labor, as a result of exploiting people. No, we're exploiting people. We've exploited people, like you said, outsourcing. All over the country. They've looked at, how...
All over the world.
All over the world. All over the world. And exploiting these people for greed, for gain. Our computers, they did a special, and they followed, the whole idea of being green and clean and all that stuff. And we can say that in America. They had this one individual where people were turning in their computers, and they were feeling so great, and, let's recycle. So long as it's not here. And when they followed those huge trucks and they found them being sent to other countries where little children with blisters and ulcers all over their hands are getting out the little material to be able to sell back. And they're looking at this happening in Asia and various parts of the world. While we're sitting here feeling so clean, we recycle and we don't do all that because we don't look at what we're doing to other people. And all of that is greed, and all of that is exploitation. And one of the things that I say, if people don't like it, we have to learn to live simpler. We really do. And that's something that is not in our heads, and it's certainly not in the heads of children and youth who believe, I want more. I want more. And even when that more means I am going to destroy the ocean, even if that means I'm going to destroy the ozone, I'm going to get mine. That's what that greed produces today. I'm going to get mine. And that, I talk about the other part of these programs I told you that I looked at that were effective in building resilience was the whole idea of service, giving. Now there's a notion.
You would agree that, and it's inarguable, that the majority of the world's population is people of color.
Absolutely.
Can you name any country on the planet that black people control the economy where they dwell?
Completely?
Completely.
I don't know. Completely? Absolutely?
Yeah.
Not certain.
Well, I mean, you can't partially be in control. Is you is or is you ain't. That's all you're
well, everywhere I look, there's poison in the cookies.
And doesn't that really plant the seeds, as I've heard it said increasingly in many lectures that I've attended? Isn't that one of the seeds of all of this anger and rage that we see
Oh, sure.
in areas?
I think, first of all, I think the notion of nationalism, the whole idea that, again, people are questioning America, whether